which is a really cool rig because it's got this 2D aesthetic to it. And it, from what I've seen, it is very, very well built. It is very flexible. And by that, I mean, you can really push it quite a bit. And what I really love is the exaggerated facial expressions and how you can really push certain details. Now, the other really cool thing about this rig is that it is free. So I'm going to give you the link here if anyone wants to check it out. There's also a few other rigs from the same creator. It is absolutely free. So if you want to check it out, definitely feel free. I would highly recommend it. And if you have some money to kind of give their way, if you test it and you really like it, definitely be sure to do that as well. Always support the riggers. As an animator, when I see a good rig, I am 100% into supporting them because I want to see more of their stuff. So we've got this rig here. We open it up. Yay, it's cool. Now, normally when I'm setting up a scene, you'll notice I have two cameras. This is my shot camera. I always like to have a shot camera open without the view of the controls. This way I can properly see the posing that I'm doing versus this view that, for example, if I'm trying to get a good facial pose, all of these controls are just getting in the way and making it hard to see what the true pose looks like. So this is just something I like to do. I always have two cameras, at least. This camera, for the most part, testing wise, is not going to be used that much. I'm pretty much just going to keep it over to the side there, and we'll focus mostly on here. Now, we've opened this rig. We've got all of this stuff that we can look at. Where do we begin? How do we start analyzing a rig and figure out how it works? What cool controls do they have? What little hidden features are built into this rig? Well, for me, I always like to try and start from the top level controls first. Then you go to the root and you work your way out. So top level controls, what are those? Those are any controls that are like the big root control that allows you to move the character all over the place. So right here, this is one of the top level controls. It allows you to reposition the entire character. You've got any option control. So this rig is very nice. The option control is right there. It's right, nice and visible. I like to look at those first because usually those will show any extra hidden controls as well as any features, and I'd like to know what those are first before diving into the individual controls. Nice, you used MetaHumans. I was actually downloading that today, this morning. My internet's a little slow, so I didn't get it downloaded, but I'm so looking forward to giving that a try. MetaHumans looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. So, yeah, I'm super excited for that. What I'm interested in is with the metahumans, like right now it's very realistic humanoids, which is great, especially for like video games and stuff like that. I'm going to be interested to see, like, in a few years, will they be able to push it so that you can make stylized humans as well? That would be really cool. I feel that's going to be a little harder because stylization is so, like, there's such a wide variety that you can do, whereas reality it's reality. There's certain criteria that you can hit. So it's going to be interesting to see how it progresses things. But let's jump back into the rig here. So top level controls. Usually it's going to be the root or any option style controls. Anything that when you open it, you can see just this like list of different options. Some rigs don't have these. Sometimes the options are kind of hidden amongst the other controls, but I like to try and find that if it's available. Oh, actually, there's a good question here. If you find a free rig like this one, and the artist says you can use it for non-commercial, but you want to use it for a short film, for example, would you just reach out to the artist and ask them, or is it better to scrap it and try to find one that's allowed for commercial use? It depends on if you're going to make money off of the project. I would definitely, if you're going to do it for a short film, I would still approach the artist and go, hey, I'm making this non-profit short film. It's basically just it's just more animation. And are you okay with that? For the most case, I would assume people would go, yeah, as long as it's non-profit, feel free. The moment that you make profit from it, or that you are going to monetize it, so you upload it to YouTube to monetize it, or you will go to like a short film festival or an animation film festival, things like that. At that point, most of the time it's going to be a no. You could still try to contact them, but most likely the answer is going to be no. Or you will have to pay for a commercial license to that person. So definitely ask. It's always a good thing to ask. But yeah, it's always a tricky situation with things like that. Usually when it says nonprofit, you have to make sure you don't make any profit off of it. So yeah. And one other question here. I'm animating a vanilla walk cycle with a character moving forward in space. I animated the first 24 frames and cycled it. The issue I'm having is when I'm expanding my line, or my timeline, so I can get a longer walk in space, I don't know why, but the character is slightly changing his position, breaking my poses. Yeah, so the reason why that's happening is your first pose and last pose don't match exactly. When you're doing a walk cycle, you need to make sure that the first pose and the last pose are exactly the same, 1-to-1. The only difference is going to be the forward translation on the entire body, and everything has to move forward an equal amount. So the hips, the feet, you can't have one foot slightly move faster than the hips. Everything has to be exactly the same. So essentially what you want to do is copy the first pose onto the last frame and then just nudge everything forward. You can do that mathematically or visually. So for example, I haven't used this rig, so we'll see how this works. I'm just going to get a kind of walk cycle pose here. I don't even know what this control does. Pole vector. Oh wait, yeah. For some reason I thought they were beside the foot when my camera was here. Yeah, of course they're the pole vectors, duh. Okay. So let's say you've got that, the arm control, I'm guessing is going to be this one. Wait, there we go. So I'm just very basic pose. How do you get the feet to curl up, I wonder? It's going to be this one. Nice. Okay. So let's say this is your first pose, frame 1. Essentially what you would do is take your entire pose, middle mouse drag over to your last pose, hit S to set a key. From there, you need to just nudge your character forward. Normally, it depends on which controls you're using, but normally it's going to be the IK feet, the cog control, or the main control that you move the character forward with, as well as the IK hands if you're using those. Pole vectors sometimes. And you just nudge the character forward until they match into that last position. And from there, the cycle should work. Essentially, you just want to make sure that this pose stays exactly the same here. If there's any variation, even if I accidentally just moved this foot, like it was just a few pixels back, every single loop will multiply that difference so that eventually that foot's going to be like a whole body length away and it's going to be super stretched out. It needs to be exactly the same. So this is typically the way I'll do it, is just copy the pose, nudge the whole thing forward, and then you should be good. Also, when you nudge it forward, make sure you're moving it in world mode, which I did not do. The reason this is important is if I do it in object mode, every object is going to move separately from each other. So let's look at the front view here, or kind of front-ish. You see how I move it and the feet are changing here? Or let me do the whole body as well. See here how the feet are moving outwards? That would cause an issue because I'm moving it forward, but because I rotate the feet out, they're moving at an angle. So when you move the whole thing forward, make sure to set it to world mode and then slide it forward exactly. Hopefully that answers your question there. And Caleb, I can definitely try to take a look at it at the end of the stream here once we finish the demo. So definitely feel free to repost that if we have some time. And how do you determine how fast the cog should be moving forward in a vanilla walk? It really depends on how fast you want the character to move. The character could be walking very slowly and just have a very relaxed walk. They could be like fast walking, not quite a jog, but moving much quicker. There's no set amount. Really, what I like to do... Okay, we're kind of going off of the rig test demo here, but these are good topics to talk about. So what I will do is kind of two things. The first one is I try to figure out the stride length. How far do I want the feet to step? Naturally, when you look at humans walking, it's very different for each person, but on average, we tend to take a step and our foot is about a foot length away, or a little less. So something like that. That would be a natural stride length for a vanilla-ish walk. So you can do that. Now, does this work all the time? No, because some characters are going to have tiny little feet. So for example, is there a scale control here? Probably not. So some characters are going to have tiny little feet. That means that the stride length, if you just use that foot length apart, is going to be super narrow. Other characters are going to have huge clown feet, where their feet are just like massively large. Think of Kingdom Hearts if you've played that game. Sora's feet are just like, they're longer, almost as long as his leg. If you went with that stride length idea there, no, it's not going to work. So if your character is humanoid, and I mean that in they've got human proportions, that's one of the things I look for. Other than that, I just look at the angle of the legs. So for the contact pose, what is the angle of the leg that I want? Is the front leg fairly straight? Is it so kind of straight down like this? Is there a sharp angle here? And what is the back leg doing? So you look at your reference and you study that. It's not going to be one-to-one, but it gives you a place to start. So I can start getting this in here a little bit, and there we go. Something like that looks pretty good. So I get the separation of the foot, I look at that, and then the angle of the legs, and I kind of work through there. Then the actual hips are going to be somewhere in the middle. So I figure that out. Then I also look at my passing pose. The passing pose is going to be a very important one for most walks, because that's going to determine the kind of forward motion of the character. So passing pose typically is just making sure that the foot that's on the ground, again, this is for a vanilla walk, is flat on the ground. The leg is straight, so not bent. Leg is straight, and you've got a slightly forward lean to it. It shouldn't be leaning back or be perfectly straight. It should have a forward lean to it. That gets you your passing pose, which is a very good thing because it gets you your hips at the right angle and kind of determines the speed of the walk very nicely. So this would be one way of doing it. Now, this also depends on what you're animating. So for example, if you're animating in games, you might have a very specific speed that you need to get your character to walk at. So when you're just doing an animation, it's like whatever feels good, it's fine. But for games, your characters have to match a very specific speed, because every enemy has to have a very specific speed. If you animate your character and you don't match that proper speed, they could be too slow, which means that enemies will always catch up to you and hit you. Or you're going to be too fast and you're always going to be catching up to all the enemies and there's going to be no challenge. So you need a very specific momentum. So for example, in games, when you're animating something, you will be told your character has to walk at, like, it depends on the scale of the scene, but let's say 170 units per minute or something like that. You're going to be given a speed. So essentially what you're going to do is you're going to animate the cog first. So from frame 1, let's say it's going to be a 60 frame walk cycle. And in that 60 frames, they need to move 170 units. Well, then you just move that forward to 170. Make sure it's linear. There you go. So that's going to be the speed of the walk right there. Now I just animate the legs underneath to make it work. Whatever that stride length ends up being. And that really depends on how fast they walk. At that speed, their feet could just be tip-tapping really quick, so the stride length could be very short, or they could be taking really long strides, which would make less steps and make them just a little slower, but wider. So there's a lot of different ways. The big thing, especially if you're doing vanilla reference, is vanilla walks, study your reference. That's going to be one of the biggest ones. Let's see. And then there was another question here I missed. It was suggested to me to try making the back and front foot equidistant from the cog on the contact pose. Yeah, that's kind of a rule of thumb, but some people walk with a little bit more of a lean back. Other people walk more with a lean forward. There's no exact thing, and this is why even that foot distance, it's somewhere to start, but it's not a rule. It just kind of gives you a place to balance. Essentially what they're doing is by putting the hips in between both feet, that basically keeps the character balanced. That's what we're typically looking for, is a nice balanced character. But it doesn't have to be that. So I personally prefer to just make sure the pose feels good. Versus trying to math it out. Mathing it out, we're not accountants. We're not here to fill out a spreadsheet and get all of these numbers, and everything has to be perfectly centered and perfect round units. No, I put whatever looks good, and I might start it okay, put it in the center, and then nudge it here or there to make it feel good. So don't worry about the math of it. And when you're moving the character forward in space, you should keep the place controller. Yeah, so the root, the layout, this master controller here on the same spot. Correct. You do not animate this for most things. This is used by the game engine, or well, if you're animating for games, it's used by the game engine to move the character forward, so you don't want to animate that. And in regular animation, this is our repositioning control. So if our director comes in and goes, hey, your walk looks great, but it needs to be a little bit more screen left. If I didn't have this, I would have to take every control and try to nudge my whole animation screen left, which could just be a horrible thing. It'll break, it'll just, ugh. That's a nightmare. Or I could just take this one and go, blip, done. So that's why we have this control. It allows us to globally move our animation, and we want to keep that free for that very specific reason. Now there will be times where we animate them, but very rarely, and for usually very specific reasons. No, you did some tests with this rig. Nice. I haven't had a chance to animate it yet. I've opened it up once, and I really liked it from what I saw. So I'm excited to jump into this and see how it works. Let's see. I find I'm able to make poses look good in blocking, but when it comes to splines, I start to get hyperextension. That's just making sure that your breakdowns work correctly. I'm actually, if we have enough time today, I'm gonna try to do a walk cycle with this rig, so we can probably go in that a little bit more in depth. And is it possible to get to not get knee pops without using leg stretch in a vanilla walk? Yes, it's very possible. If you're getting knee pops, usually it means that there's something in the hips or the feet that are not working correctly, and you need to just adjust those slightly. That's what causes a knee pop, is there is a relationship issue between the foot or the hip. And it can be very minor things, but it could just be like a little rotation of the hip is off, the spacing on the foot is not quite correct, little things like that. Those will cause the knee pops. So when I'm animating, it's not that you can't use the stretch control. That's a great way to clean them out at the end, but always try to fix it with the hips and feet first, and then use the leg stretch attribute to finesse it if basically you know that, yeah, the feet there, I want them to be exactly that. They're super appealing. Oh, they can't be any better. I don't want to touch them. The hips, they are doing exactly what I want them to do. Okay, done. They are perfect. Not that they are perfect anatomically, but they capture the exact motion you want. Then you go into the leg stretch. If you haven't reached that point and the hips and feet they're good, but you haven't gotten to that like final like super nitpicky polish, then go in and fix the hips and the feet first. Readjust them slightly. Oftentimes it's just a tiny little adjustment. And can I ask what is the difference between a breakdown and an in-between? Honestly, they're similar. It's just terminology. So this depends on animators. Each animator kind of approaches it differently. Let me explain it this way. So for me, a key pose is one of the main storytelling poses. It's kind of if you have just your keys, you can get the entire story and the shot will make sense. It might not look the best, but story-wise, it is clear. And these are the poses that kind of have to be in there to tell the story. From there, we start going into breakdowns. Breakdowns are a form of in-betweens. They are going in between your key poses. But to me, my distinction is that a breakdown is a pose that I need to put in myself to describe the motion. So if I have a character going from here to here, how are they going to do it? Are they going to duck down? Are they going to go up? Is their head going to drag back? Is the arm going to lead the action first? That's the breakdown. We have pose A, pose B. How does it get between those 2 points? That's what a breakdown is. I'm breaking down that motion to make it so that the audience understands it. And you can put tons of breakdowns. For me, when I talk about in-betweens are the keys that Maya is putting in. So for example, I'm just going to animate the root control here. So we've got our key on frame 1, a key on frame 17, and this motion in between that I haven't done anything to. This is what Maya is giving me. I would call this an in-between. It is something that is given to me. Now I can adjust them with my curves and whatnot, and I can set extra keys to adjust the in-between, but most of the time it's tweaking what the computer gave versus a breakdown, which is a whole new pose to help describe an action. Sometimes it's just a little change on a breakdown. Most of the time it's a pretty big change. So hopefully that makes sense. And again, it really depends on the animators. Some animators, they just call them in-betweens. They don't use the term breakdown. Some, they use breakdowns for very specific things. Then you have keys and golden keys and storytelling keys. Everyone just has a different language to it. Essentially, it's just putting keys. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, there's a lot of terms that don't really get used universally in animation. Even different studios like Pixar to DreamWorks to ILM, they will tend to use different terminology just based on their history at the studio. So yeah, I wouldn't put too much like it has to mean this, as long as you understand what you're aiming for. And for example, when you set a key, you know what you want to do with that key. That's the important thing, that you're describing motion or an action. Let's see. And I think, did I miss any questions? I don't think so. If I did, definitely feel free to repost them. But let's go back to the rig exploration here. So reset that, and then let's just keep the arms down here. T poses just aren't super appealing. So going back to the original demo, normally when I start exploring a rig, the first things I tend to look at are the major controls. So the root controls, the top level ones. So here we've got our root. There's not too much on there. Good. So this is basically my mover. I don't need to know too much else with this. Next, I'll usually look at the cog, see if there's any controls on there. The cog, or the center of gravity control, is a lot of places riggers will place. It's a place where riggers will put extra controls on a lot of the time. This one does not have anything, so it's just translates, rotates. Nice and simple. Okay. So from there, let's move on to, in this case, we have all these top level controls. Well, one of them is very obvious. Options. Here's all the options for the rigs. Great. That's actually very handy. I kind of like the fact that it's all within one segment here. We also have this control here, which looks like it is facial. So we just look at the name here. It's the emote master. So this is actually one of the really cool things of this rig, is it's got a lot of anime style expressions. So for example, you can just blank out the eyes and then switch the different facial expressions. So I don't know if that's in here or maybe in another control somewhere, but let's see if we can find it. So you've got different patches. What do these do? Here we go. So you can see as I'm turning these on, there's these different little patches that come on. So let's take the right eye here. Look at that, and we can translate it. And right here, emote patch, you can switch that eye shape. So let's actually blank out the eye here. So there you go, which is really cool. Honestly, I love this. I love that kind of 2D effect to a rig. So that's actually really cool that you can change the pupils, and this is cool. I love how you have 3 sadness ones, because then you can just animate them. Let's do this here. I'm just as a test. You can just do this, and then you get that like shimmery eye effect just by setting a key, and then I could cycle that and you just get that little eye like crying effect there, which is really cool. Let's get rid of those keys. So that's really neat. You can even flip them, which is really cool. Nice. And then looks like you can translate them, which is really nice. So yeah, and rotate. Good. And even scale them. And then going back to that control here. So this is basically the patches of the face. So they also have a patch for the cheek, which I'm assuming is going to be all the like blush and stuff. Yeah. Nice. Just move that right there. This is really cool. Tired eyes. That's really cool. And then, so same thing with the tiers. You have tier 1, tier 2. You could just animate that. So it just back and forth, and you'd get that like crying effect. Probably on 2s. There you go. The angry one. This one you probably have to just move out a little bit there. There you go. In the mouth corner. This is really cool. I like this. It's so simple. Like you just do that, and it doesn't change anything geometry wise. The geometry is exactly the same. This line is actually just sitting out in front, but it definitely gives a different feel to that face. Let's reset that. Okay. So, well, now we know what this control does. Would it be easy to add custom patches? It depends on how they've rigged it. Let me actually open it up on my computer here. you could probably link new patches in or overwrite it. So let me find the folder on my computer. So the patches folder is right here. So there's your emote patch right there. And then your cheek patch. So eyes and cheek. So what you could do is basically open this up, change that texture, and it would overwrite the current ones with new ones. So for example, if you didn't like the yen symbol here, you could put a $sign and just save it out. So that's one way you could do it. So is it possible? Yeah. You could probably add even more here. There's some blank spots. It would be trying to figure out how the connections work in the rig itself. So you could probably add more in if you wanted to. So yeah, it just uses a section of the image exactly. So what other controls do we have? Well, options, that's pretty self-explanatory. We'll go into that in just a second. What's this one? It looks like this is the hair control. Yep, that's what I thought. So that's actually really nice. They've got all of these kind of major hair controls. I'm assuming there's probably going to be some individual hair controls built into the rig. But at least for kind of core motion, this is pretty good. I like this. You can get some simple overlap, simple motions. It's not going to be the most in-depth motions, especially for the bangs here. Like, unless you're doing like a big magical effect that raises all the hair up evenly, this is going to be too even to make like really nice animation with. But for like quick bouncing and then over, so you just want to have the character do this and then just a quick motion that all the other animation over top will just kind of overlap with, that could work really well. So this is essentially just the hair controls. Yep, that's pretty good. Let's actually dig through the options, because options are where you'll find a lot of the cool stuff in a rig. So we'll just start from the top. Orient. So this is a very important control. It's nice that we know where it is here. Normally, at least on the rigs that I tend to use, it's on the head controller, which I would see here. Which it looks like it's got an orient here as well. Interesting. So this is going to be an interesting test. Which one is this orienting? I'm assuming this orient here is for the options control. So if I turn this on, yeah, so see how it's moving with the head? If I turn that off, now it's still following the head, but it stays level, which could actually be very nice in a way. So you're not having to like worry about the angles of them. I don't think it would be a huge thing. So you can see how that rotates there. Not a huge thing, but helpful. Facial blend shape. This is just going to turn on the blend shapes for the face on and off, which let's see if we can get any controls here. So if I take that facial blend shape on, yeah, so you can see if I turn that on and off, it turns off the blend shapes of the face, so the controls will stop working. Now, is it going to be all the controls? Kind of looks like it. So this is actually a nice little option if you just want to remove the facial animation and just kind of, you're animating it and, okay, I want to focus on the body. Just turn that off. The face basically gets reset. Once you're ready, turn it back on, you get all of your expressions. That's actually kind of nice. Personally, I don't know if I'd use it that much, but it's there and it's not in the way, so that's a nice thing. All body controls, I'm assuming this is gonna, yeah, turn off all the body controls and just keep the facial controls on, which let's actually get rid of that patch control there. So that's actually pretty nice, especially like when I'm animating. It's nice to just focus on the face after you do a pass on the body, and to have this control in there is, to me, very much appreciated, because now I can just zoom in here and I'm not having to worry about accidentally selecting the head controller and rotating her head. So for example, with this, if I want to move the eyelid here, well, I clicked and dragged, but now I selected the clavicle and the head controller. So if I move this, you can see how everything is moving here. It's not bad, but when you've got a character that's kind of this dense in terms of controls, being able to turn that off is very much appreciated. I like that. Okay, what else? All facial controls, probably the same thing. This one just turns the face on and off. Also something I really like. Whenever I have that switch, I just really appreciate it. So what else do we have? Eye primary control. Okay, so that basically takes out the eyeball control here, which is the orient control there, as well as we have the individual orient right there. So this one is an aim control. The eye points towards this. This is basically just a regular control that controls the specific rotation, and even I think I do translation. Oh, that's cool. Wow, you could really I don't think I've really ever used a rig that had that much eye control there. So that's actually really cool. I wonder if do a there you go. I was thinking of Duck Dodgers. So that's actually really cool. So eye controls, that's just the controls for the eye secondary. Ooh, nice. So eye secondary is going to let us animate the shine of the eye. Wow, you could even move the pupil separately. That's cool. I wonder if you can do the... Yes, you can. Nice. So if ever anyone's watched like anime from the 90s, so think of Slayers if you've seen that, or what else? Slayers is the one that comes to mind. Their eyes aren't round. Typically their eyes are drawn oval shaped. The pupils are always oval. Yeah, Pokemon from the 90s, that's a great one. So this actually gives you that control to do that and capture that style, which is really cool. I like that. It's not necessary, but is there, which is really, really cool. So we've got those two controls. Just to double check, what is this? Eye socket control. Okay, so this allows you to just move the entire socket. Good. These types of controls are always useful. It seems odd that it would be like right in the center of the eye there. Usually they're on the outside edge, but that's a minor nitpick. It does keep everything in line, which is nice. Okay. So, eye secondary, that's the pupil and the shine. Okay. Eyelid controls, so that's going to be right there. So eyelids open, shut, nice. Now the thing with the eyelid control, which I'm guessing is you've got eyelid secondary. Yeah, perfect. So this is something I always look for on a good eye rig, is the ability to actually shape the overall form. If it's just up and down and that's it, that's not enough. You want to be able to shape these eyes for good acting shots. For a game shot or body mechanics, not necessary. But if you're going to be doing an acting shot, this adds so much to a rig. So that's perfect. So eye secondary, what else? You'll notice that when I turn them on and off, I'm just kind of going back and forth. Ooh, for anyone who's looking for the link to the rig, here it is. It's a great rig. And can you scale the eyes? Yeah, so you can see the scale attribute is on right here. So you can scale the eyes there, and then I'm assuming you could just scale, yeah. So you could scale both of those. But I was mentioning, you notice how I turned the controls on and off? Essentially what I'm doing is trying to see what turns on and off. So I'm just looking to see if there's any other controls that come on with this. Let's see. Now brows, we have just the one main brow control, no secondary it looks like. So brows are kind of hard to see. Let's take that hair and just go flip for now. Okay, so what brow controls do we have? We have okay, so this is the eyelid, and then I'm guessing the white one here is the brow master, which is good. And nice, you can rotate it. I always love when you can rotate the master and then scale it. It just gives you a lot of options in terms of the brow. And then we've got the brow individual controls here, which are great. Because if you're going to ever have a character bring their brows down, brows don't just go down, they come in a little bit on the center. So it's good to be able to have that control in there and really shape those brows. And from what I can see here, these brows are super dynamic. And you can get a lot of shapes here. Yeah. You can see just that rotation curve there. That really helps a lot. We are getting some deformation in the forehead, but that's not a bad thing. Since facial expressions move so quickly, that's usually not going to be a problem. Let's see, when you're turning off and on a control in the channel box, how are you turning them on and off so fast? You can, for any attribute, you can just click on the name here and then middle mouse drag in the viewport, and that'll switch the attribute. If it's a value like this, it'll scrub through and you can adjust the value like so. I'm middle mouse dragging in the viewport. But when it's an on-off switch, it'll just toggle it on and off. So I can just go tuk, 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 on and off, on and off, on and off, just by middle mouse dragging and moving left or right. Instead of having to go in, okay, 1, 0, which is actually the quick way as well. I know a lot of people when they start out, oh, I want to turn the brows on, enter. Oh, I need to turn it off. O, F, F, off. Just 1 or 0. 1 is on, 0 is off. And then the even faster way, middle mouse drag. Click on the name, middle mouse drag, done. And I don't have to move my hand on the keyboard, which is great. So what else do we have? So I don't think let's bring the hair back down just so we don't get that spooked look there. And yeah, the speedometer, this right here changes the quickness of how things change in here. I almost never use this, honestly. Normally what I'm going to do is just hold down Control or Shift. So if you move this here, oops. Yeah, so if I just click in the value here and then click and drag, so let's do the eye control here. So I just click and drag right in there. I can change the values. If I hold down Control, it'll move it more slowly. You can see it's going in decibel numbers. If I hold down Shift, it'll go much faster. So you can see I just did a small movement and it went to 200 right there. I use that more often than I use this. This is still great. So this will basically do a very similar thing. But yeah, I almost never touch that unless I'm rigging. Then I'll use that a little bit more. Yeah, and that's true, Vraukus. So in newer versions of Maya, which like I was just doing here, clicking on the value right there, you can do the same thing here. So to turn something on and off, I can just click on the on off right there and drag that. So I believe that came in 2019 or 2018. I forget. It used to be the only way you could do that was the middle mouse drag in the viewport, at least for a long time. So it's much nicer. Yeah, and Tara, you can do Control Shift for even finer movement. That's correct. I always forget about that one. Thanks for the reminder there. So if you really want fine-tune motion, you can just hold Control Shift, then click on that value and get that really nice little motion. Okay, so let's take a look at the lip controls here. So lip controls, okay, that's basically the main lip controls. What do we have here? We've got the main lip, so I'm selecting this diamond one. I'm assuming that's going to move. Yep, the mouth globally. So that's good. I love controls like this because when we smile, for example, our mouth goes up. When we frown, the corners go down, but the middle of the mouth usually goes up as well. If we're a little more shocked or sad, the mouth drops. So that up and down of the mouth as well as the side to side, kind of moving the mouth over like so, it just makes the character so much more alive than just animating just the corners. So that's great. I love that control there. What other mouth controls we have? We have the corner controls, the lip controls. Yeah, those are pretty self-explanatory here. Now, one thing that I'm seeing here, which looks really cool, is there's these corner controls, which, if I'm guessing correctly, yeah, allows you to animate the corners, and nice, you can just rotate them. That's really cool. So if you want to just kind of round that out, kind of go that kind of like, oh, that seeing someone wipe out on their bike kind of look, you could do something like that just by rotating those. That's really cool. I like that. Now, you also have, whenever you're looking at these attributes, look at your channel box. So for example, with a corner here, we have corner relax. Well, what does that do? Oh, that just moves both of these corner controls together. Corner spread. There we go. Sticky lip. What does that do? It just kind of zips the mouth closed. Familiarize yourself with these extra little attributes. It doesn't mean you have to use them, but what it does mean is that you have that option. And it's good to know about these before you jump into an animation, instead of figuring out halfway through and finding that, oh wait, if I just used that one attribute, I could have saved myself a ton of time. So always double check those. Look in the channel box, try to figure out what they do. So the relax and the relax weight is basically going to be, I'm assuming, if I corner relax here, let's see. What's it gonna change? I wonder if it's when the mouth gets pulled out more. No? Interesting. Let me reset this here. Infinite undos. Ah, gotta love it. So corner relax basically opens this up. Relax weight, I would assume would be interesting. Doesn't seem to do much. To be fair, all the controls that it's giving me already, I don't see myself using a relax weight. Usually when there's a weight control like this, it would adjust how much power goes into that relaxation there. But I'm not seeing any change when I switch the auto relax off. So it might have to do with just maybe moving the lips more forward or something. Blip. That's nice. You can really, there you go. Perfect. This rig is going to be so much fun to do some facial stuff with. So we've got the mouth there. That's pretty good. The relax weight, I'm going to have to keep in mind. I'll test that out a little bit more. So as I'm going through this, if there's ever a control that I don't understand or like, when would I use this? Keep track of it so that as you keep using the rig, you can learn it. It's not that I'm just going to go, never get, is out of sight, out of mind. No, I'm still going to think about it, but I'll try it out when I'm doing a little bit more than just moving one control randomly here and there. Let's see. I understand the RGB bands in the rotate tool, but I'm confused about the outer yellow circle. Oh, the outer yellow circle for the rotate tool? So, well, here, let me reset the tool here. So you've got the RGB, so red is X, Y is Y, or sorry, green is Y, and then blue is the Z axis. So those allow you to rotate in these very specific axes. When you select one, it'll turn yellow. So that shows you the selected axis. Now there is this global control at the outer edge. This is going to rotate perpendicular to the camera. So if I take this eye control here and rotate it, it is rotating flat to camera. If I move my camera over here and rotate it, The eyes are just going crazy. It'll again rotate perpendicular to camera. So wherever I move my camera, that's where it's going to rotate from. I honestly don't use it that often, but it can be very helpful. It's the same thing with the move tool. The move tool has the X, Y, and Z right there. It's also got these extra buttons here. So this one is going to move everything except Y. This is going to move everything except X. This is going to move everything except Z. So you can kind of go over it on planes. You could also do this by, I believe, what was the shortcut here? I forget the shortcut. There was a shortcut to do that without using these. I always just use these. They're easier. But then in the center here, you have this box, and this will move the object perpendicular to your camera. So wherever your camera is, it'll just move side to side. Is it control? Weird. For some reason, it's not. Oh, no, it is working. Okay. Visually, it didn't look like it was working. There you go. Tara with the nice tips there. So I knew that the hotkey was there. Haha. So if you hold down Control and select the Y-axis, you'll notice that if you look at the channel box, the Y-axis isn't moving. So it's locking that control out. It's the same thing as hitting this button right here. Same thing. I personally don't really use the shortcut. I just use the manipulator right there. That's what I'm used to. But both are great. And Tara, thank you so much for the reminder. Keeping me alive. Okay, so we had looked at the mouth. Let's go back into the options here. Let's go into the facial... Okay, wait, we've got lip controls. Then we've got lip secondary. Okay, perfect. So these are always controls I love to see on a rig, is the fine-tune controls for the mouth. As much as these kind of global controls like this one here can be very nice for shaping things, there are times when it's nice to be able to just select the individual shapers and just kind of move those up, and you can really get much more specific shapes in there. So that's great that they have that, and from what I can see, they're very dynamic. So you can really push them, you can rotate them, scale them. Let's see what happens if I scale it. Nice. So you can really get that pinch in there if you wanted to like get that sharp sneer. So that's great. Okay, what other options do they have? Now, one thing I'm noticing already when I'm using this rig is that as I'm animating, for example, I'm looking at the mouth and, oh, I want to turn on the options. Okay, go up, select the options, come back in, do that. Now, this rig does come in with a picker. So you could use the picker if you want to and select that easily. I didn't get the picker working. I believe I have to download another plugin to get it working. If I remember correctly, I'll have to double check on the rig download page. But we could do that. Or I could just very quickly make a shelf button here. So bring in my script editor. There's my command for the select control. If ever you want to figure this out, just select the control. That's going to be right there. That's the command. I'm going to select it, middle mouse drag it onto my shelf, save it as a mel script, and there we go. Now, if I just hit this button, boop, it'll select the options. Now I can just zoom in here and let's turn off the lip controls and let's turn on the mouth controls. What are these going to be? So it looks like the mouth controls are for the teeth. So it's called mouth control, but it's essentially the teeth. Oh, nice. She's got a little gap right there. This is great. We want to be able to animate teeth, and it looks like we've got a lot of control here. We've also got... Okay, so that's the main control there. We've got the individual shapers. Nice. So you could really get like that buck tooth front teeth there. We got the back molars. Great. Nice and flexible. I like that. Okay. And then there was... Okay, so that's pretty simple. And then facial control miscellaneous. Nice. Okay, so these are going to be the other controls that are going to be very helpful. Let's turn off the mouth control there. Which is going to be the nose. Getting to move that around. The cheeks. Now, to be fair, this rig is kind of a very 2D style. So these controls are probably going to be used a little less than you would normally use for most rigs. It's not going to be quite as visible because you're not seeing the shading on there. Now this rig actually does come with two variations. This is the 2D version. There is also a shaded version, so you can actually see the shading on the character. But yeah, this is going to still be very helpful, especially if you're animating it from profile to kind of push the shape of the face there or push the line of action a little bit. That's very nice. Okay. Let's turn that off. So that looks like most of the facial stuff. Now, I like how they delineate all of these. So facial, now is the hair stuff. Okay, the hair stuff is going to be very important. Let's actually turn off the facial controls for now. And let's actually turn off the eye controls too. Just simplify our view. Okay, hair controls. Boop. Nice. Okay, so this is what I was looking for the hair, where we can animate individual sections of it. This is what's going to really allow us to get some nice hair animation in there. This global control here is okay for certain things, but to be able to animate this and like get the S shapes like that, that's going to be really useful. Otherwise, if you look at the main control here for the little hair thing, you'll notice that you can only get C shapes with it. So you can only bend it this way, bend it that way. There's no S shape that you can get. So it's very limiting in our animation. It makes things feel a little dull. Not that it's a bad control, definitely not. Especially it's nice because you can just scale it from here, make it a little longer if you wanted to. But the fact that they have these individual controls, I really appreciate. And you can even scale just these too. I really love how flexible this rig is. Like everything can scale. That's really nice. Actually, I need to double check something. I don't think I saw ear controls. Okay, cool. So you can even turn off that hair visibility right up there. That's nice. And secondary. Okay, so secondary, primary. Okay, simple enough. And then let me turn on the facial controls again. Are there no ear controls? Doesn't look like it. Unless it's somewhere hidden in the body. Not that you necessarily have to animate ears that much, but I always like the option, especially if a character is going to run their hand next to their face. A question about shelves. In the shelf editor, I can't figure out how to move a command from one shelf to another without recreating it. Let's see. I don't use the shelves too often, but I believe shelf editor, to do this, let's say I wanted to move this from my custom shelf and move it into, what's a good one? Let's say poly modeling. How would we want to do this? How could we do it? I wonder if actually, can you just middle mouse drag? Yeah, just middle mouse drag on the shelf here. So there's my button, middle mouse drag, drop it into custom. There you go. So you don't want to go through the shelf editor, you just go through the shelf. Yeah, and what art app or thing do you use for this 3D? This is Maya, which is the industry standard for animation, and it is a great program. It's a very, very powerful program, which is really nice. So let's see, what other controls do we have up here? So missing the ear, not a big deal because she's got such long hair. It's not like we even see it that often. Okay, so clothing. This is going to be an important one. And this is something I actually tested a little earlier when I first opened the rig, because as much as I love this outfit, like you don't usually see characters with dresses a lot. There's a reason why we don't see characters with dresses and these long baggy sleeves. It's a lot to animate. And if I was to give this rig to a student, let's say they've first time working with a full body character like this is going to be a lot to put into their shot. I wouldn't recommend it, but the riggers thought ahead. So they've got this nice dress and like flowing sleeves, but you can turn these off. So you can turn off, let's see, or sorry, these are the controls here. Let's actually go to the parts here. So you can actually turn those off right there. So for example, you could turn off those little hair, they call it the hair whisk. You could turn off the bow. You can turn off the top and the skirt. You could even turn on a casual outfit, which is really cool. So body casual right there. And now you have a much simpler, let's see, where's the sleeves? There we go. Much simpler outfit that would work really well for like just a quick body mechanics test without having to animate all the clothing on top. So this is great right here. Let's turn those back on, get that outfit. Now, an important thing here is that when we do have all of this outfit stuff, we should be able to animate the clothing. So let me actually turn all the body controls off here to simplify this and see what controls we have here for the clothing. We'll do one at a time. Okay, so for the shirt, what do we have? Nice. You can animate the little overlap on the bottom section there. That's really cool. Nice. They have a little controls for the tie. That's fantastic. That alone is going to add a lot of depth right there. And then we've got these ones here. How do they rotate? Nice. So you can easily just animate a little overlap, and I think you can even, yeah, animate them bouncing. That's really cool. Even the thing on the back here, the frill. Nice. So you've got all of that. What else do we have? That's the shirt. The skirt. Skirts are a pain to rig, so I'm interested to see how they're going to do this. So we've got the master control. Always, when I'm looking at a rig, I try to look at the master controls first and then work my way down. So master control. This is really cool. So you can just move this up or down to get that nice motion through there. Move it forward, back. Nice. That's super flexible. Just this control here would make it very easy to animate some quick overlap without having to go crazy with it. Let's see. We've got flare, sway. Nice. Oh, that's going to be a great control. Just to be able to add a little shake to the bottom. Nice. Puff. Nice. Basically just little shapers. Ripple weight. Ripple weight. Is that the ripple here? Oh, no, wait. Oh, cool. This is cool. So ripple weight and then ripple cycle. Look at that. That's cool. You just have to animate that one thing and it just gets you that nice little motion in there. That's cool. Auto collide. What's that going to collide with? The body? Then we also have the follow control. So follow controls are always very important. This is essentially what control is going to follow. Right now it controls or follows the hip. I could switch this to the cog or the root. And this is going to be very nice. So let's actually turn on the body controls just to see how it works. So right now, if I take the cog here and move this up or down, you'll notice how the skirt moves along with. But if I was to take this and let's say follow the route. Now as I move the cog, see how the controls stay back here? They don't follow along. I don't know when I would use that for the skirt, but it's nice that they give you that option. So now you can see how that control follows right there. It's always nice to have those options to choose. Okay, what other things do they have in here? Let's turn off the body controls once again. So they have this top level here, which is basically the base control. Okay, nice. And then they have individual controls for the actual sections, which is really cool. That's really nice. Now, actually, I wonder if the auto collide, is that the thing that was causing the hips to, or sorry, when I was moving the body up and down? Yeah, there you go. So that's really nice. So see how the dress kind of just keeps its form now? Whereas auto collide will make it so it doesn't hit the legs. Auto collide is nice for the most part, but the problem is it creates this unrealistic motion to the dress. So you can see here, like that's not really going to work unless you're wearing like a big hoop skirt or like with the actual cage around the dress. So to be able to turn that off and then animate the dress yourself so it properly collides with the legs, that's really nice. I like that. So like this, now I can just take the dress and move this myself, boop. And now we get a proper connection there. Then we can just take the back. Oop, that's the wrong control there. And just flatten that out there to have it drape. So that's really cool. Nice. Dress controls. Let's see, or skirt I should say. Sleeve. I'm guessing it's gonna be similar. So we've got global rotation. This is overlap control here. Really nice. The purple ones look like they are, they call them hand controls. Okay, so this basically allows you to shape it. That's nice. Being able to shape that and really get that line of action the way you want it, that's cool. So basically the purple ones look like they're shaper controls. Whereas the larger ones are the main movers. Nice. They've really put a lot of effort into making sure that you have the controls you need in here, which I really appreciate. A lot of times when you have clothing options like this, especially on free rigs, they're just not great. They move it, but you can't shape the cloth, which is okay, but it's very limiting, especially depending on the style that you want to animate in. Let's take a look at the bow here. This should be simple enough. So it looks like we've got our two main movers there. Shapers, nice. Okay. Nice. And then it looks like this is pretty simple. It's just nice. Don't need much more than that. Perfect. Okay. So the big things are the dress. That one had a lot of really cool options on there. Okay. What other options do we have here? So we have character geo visibility. That's pretty easy. So character geo turns it on or off. Outline geometry turns that on or off. So that's actually cool that you can just turn off that outline if you want. And I believe, yeah, outline width, you can actually make the outline thicker or thinner if you want to, which is really cool. You just want a little bit of an outline versus a nice thick cartoony outline there. Then proxy. Nice. That's a really nice proxy mode there. So for anyone who doesn't know what proxy mode is just a approximation. It allows us to animate faster because the geometry isn't skinned, so there's not as much calculations. It's just basic geometry, and just makes it faster to work with. Especially if you have a slower computer, moving these controls or this type of geometry tends to be much more efficient on your computer. To be fair though, from what I've been using of the rig so far, it doesn't feel heavy at all. Like I move anything and it feels like one-to-one responsiveness, which is great. So I don't even know if I would use the proxy mode other than if I wanted to track certain things. Now, one thing that I do notice, like usually when you have a proxy mode, you're able to turn off controls. Doesn't look like, or sorry, turn off parts of the geometry. So hide the head or hide the arms, something like that. It doesn't look like this has that, but I might just be missing that control. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Not a big deal. I just do like having that option. Now, to be fair, what I can always do is just come in here and select the geometry and then hide it. So I just take that, Control H, Control Shift H to bring it back. So if ever I needed to focus on, like maybe I don't want to focus on the head, I want to focus on the core of the body, just do that. So not a big deal. Okay. Now, this is a really nice rig. I want to animate her, but just need to figure out what. Yeah, ever since this rig came out, I've been trying to figure out what I should animate for this shot because it just looks so cool. Yeah, she does have a casual outfit, so which I do really like. So now we have parts visibility. Actually, I wonder if this will work with proxy. Nice. So you don't even have to go into proxy mode. Man, this rig is awesome. So you can turn off the head. It's just the body. Okay. Normally I'd like to be able to turn off arms, legs, but head and body, they have that at least, so that's good. Then we have hair, hair whisk. And then we did this already, the clothing. And then we have the casual option. Boop, right there. Let's bring her hair back. It would be nice if there was a ponytail option to hide the ponytail and just have the base form there. Not a big deal, but it just, especially for, yes, this rig is free. If anyone's interested, you can find it here. The only reason I would say it would be nice to have a ponytail option to turn that off is when new animators are starting, student animators, having a ponytail, it's always kind of a pain to animate because it's overlap and you have to, it's one of those things that can very often just not look quite right if you're not used to animating them. So it would just make it a little easier for new animators to approach that. Is it bad that it's there? Not at all. Like, it's just it would be nice kind of feature. Okay, so let's keep this outfit in for now. Now, the other thing with this rig is she comes with props. So we've got some prop controls. Let's turn that on. Okay, so that's just going to be the follow control. What props do we have? We have the go hey. Turn that on. So that's this nice stick. They've got good good controls on all of these. Look at that. Nice. Orient prop. Okay, so that's just going to determine where that curve is going to line up with. And then, oh cool, so there's two of them. FK motion, IK motion. Nice, so they have FK and IK curves, and then micro controls. You can turn all of those on and off. Ooh, nice. Built-in twist and roll. Nice. So for something like this, it depends on what you're animating, but IK seems like it might be a good way to go. It depends. But that's really cool that they have all of those options in there. Okay. What else do they have? Shide? Where is that? Oh wait, no. Is it here? Oh, okay, so that's the tassels. Okay. And then the Ofuda, which is the little talisman. Yep. And they've got a bend deformer on here. Very nice. That's really cool. Nice. Okay. Pretty simple. So that's all the options in there. So that's not too bad. This rig is pretty powerful. I like it. Now, there's a few other things we need to do. So we've gone through the options, but we still haven't actually gone through the main body controls. So let's actually start going through that now. At this point, we've kind of clarified a lot of the cool little hidden features. Now it's kind of just trying to figure out, how does the rig move? How does it kind of work? And what other controls can we use in here? So when I'm doing this, I will often start with the root control, or sorry, not the root, the cog control, and then work my way down or up the rig. So let's start with that. So we've got the cog primary control. This moves the character. Let's actually zoom out here just a little bit. So this, pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory, nothing too hidden in there. As we tilt it, yeah, everything goes along here. Nice. What else do we have? Well, there's this secondary control right in here. So cog secondary. And if this is what I think it is, this is going to be what allows us to offset the cog and change our rotation. So this is for any really good rig, having an offset like this is so helpful. For example, if you want this character to swing from her arms, so she grabs on and then swings under something. Normally, if you don't have that control, you're going to have to animate this character rotating, and then the head goes back and you have to move them forward, and then it's a nightmare. With this control here, I can just offset this down here, and now my cog control is above the head, and I rotate them, they swing through. So if I have my character sitting on a swing and just like lazily swinging along, depends on how long the swing is, I can just do this, and now wee, swing, nice and simple, done. This whole swinging motion is complete, and I've literally animated one attribute versus trying to translate and rotate them and having to do a constraint or something like that. I'm done. So that is great. Now there's a whole bunch of other features in here, so let's explore that, because that's got me curious. Can you then go back and change that to default? Yeah. So while you would animate that, so let's say she's swinging and then she jumps off. The moment that she jumps off, you just reset them. So you just animate them back to their default positions and then animate that through. Visually, the audience will never tell the difference, but you're going to have that nice ease of animation in both sections. It's kind of like switching from FK to IK. You're using one or the other, but then you can just switch, and as long as it transitions smoothly, the audience will never know, and you're using the best for whichever situation you're working in. Okay, so maintain volume. What's that going to be for? The rotations, I'm assuming? Interesting. Why would this have a maintain volume? Oh, I think it might be for the spine. So right now the spine is in IK. So let's kind of stretch her out and see what happens if I turn off maintain. Yeah. So maintain volume. You'll notice that as I stretch the character out, she gets thinner. This is because, well, if you have an object and you stretch it out, think of a balloon or a rubber thing, it's going to thin out a rubber band. This is good for certain cases. If you want to do something really cartoony and kind of make a smear frame, this can get really annoying because as you kind of stretch her out, like she suddenly becomes a tiny little stick, which for a smear frame is not what we want. A smear frame volume doesn't matter in a smear frame. Smear is like, if I do this, my hand isn't stretching or like shrinking. It's just a visual optical illusion that there's a smear there. So to be able to just turn that off and keep the size of the body consistent is actually a really nice option here. For squash and stretch, maintain volume is really nice. So that's really good that they have that there. And then we have the controls. So right now the spine is set to IK, which means we get, let's see, this control here, that's the IK lower spine. Good, it just moves on its own. IK mid spine, good. So this is gonna let us shape. Then IK upper spine, nice, good. Now there's this other control here. Okay, that's the prop control. I think I forgot to turn that off. There we go. Don't need to see that. Okay. Now let's actually turn on the FK control, see how those work. So we've got, oh wait, this is the, okay, hip control. Was this part of the IK as well? Okay, so hip is separate right now. So the hip control just lets us animate the hips. Nice. We can translate it. Okay, good. FK controls. So FK is going to be these ones here. We've got the FK spine right there. And there are how many? Looks like there's 4. Lower spine. Okay. So with FK spine, normally when I animate FK spine, I like to select all 3 or all the FK spines together because this allows us to get a little bit more of a natural curve. It's how the body moves. So I'm just testing this out right now. I want to see how that body moves when I move all of them together here. I'm looking at the shape of the spine here. The hair is kind of getting in the way, but yeah, we can get some pretty good shapes there. And we're feeling that movement in the lower spine, which is good. We want to feel that bending happening in the lumbar region, the lower back, not in the upper spine area. So that's really, really good. I like this. It's bending very well. Okay. Yeah, the spine controls are really solid. And then you have, okay, that's just the neck control. Okay. We'll put it back into IK just to keep it at its default for now. So that's pretty much the spine. I think there's not too much more to it than that. So let's start going to the feet. So right here we've got the IK hip control. That just allows us to shape the hip and kind of push this. Usually you don't use this very often, but it's a nice thing to have, especially for more extreme poses. That can be very nice. Going down, we've got the knee controls. So this is the knee offset. I'm guessing these are controls that you won't use that often because that's just going to break the knee. Yeah. So we wouldn't use this too often, but it's good that it's there. You've got your PV, your pull vector. This is basically where does the knee point to. This is what you would usually use to animate the knee. And then you have the follow attribute. So by default right now, it's set to follow the foot. So when I move the foot, the pull vector goes with. This is good for most cases. When we move our foot and rotate our foot, our knee tends to follow along with and points towards where the foot is pointing. This isn't always the case. So for example, if you're sitting down, you can put your foot flat on the ground and then rotate your knee in and out with that is separate from your foot. So you can still do that here, but there are also times where you can rotate your foot. So if you just kind of sit down, lift your foot up, and then just twist your ankle, your knee is not swinging around. So if I had the character kind of just sitting here and I wanted to have her like just swing her feet, notice how the knee is going to go crazy here. So the space attribute, we talked about this earlier, is basically going to determine what that control follows. Right now it's following the foot. I could have it set to follow the hip control instead. So now it's going to follow this one right here. And you can see it follows that hip. Move that knee into place. And now as she's swinging her foot, we just have that. And all I'd have to do is add a little bit of secondary motion into that knee, and I get a nice little foot sway. Oh, sure, definitely feel free to ask your question. Okay, so the knees I really love. They've got a lot of good control on here. Like, there isn't much you can really do usually with a knee. And like, it's kind of limited because it's a knee. It doesn't really do much, but they've got a lot of good little things that you can do here. Okay. So let's look at the foot here. So the foot has a lot of controls that normally aren't on the rigs I tend to use. Normally on rigs that I'll use, you have a lot of attributes on the foot controls, or you have very specific foot roll controls that you rotate. This one has 3 controls. It looks like you have your main ankle control, which is going to be the thing that moves the ankle. It's also got the typical stretch controls, so making sure the leg is shorter or longer. So the upper leg, lower leg, ability to lock the knee, which basically puts the knee at the PV. And IK softness, I wonder what that is. It kind of feels, oh, okay, yeah. So that's the leg stretch. So that's going to be the control that lets you get rid of knee pops right there, most likely. You could also just use a little bit of stretch. Auto stretch, right now it's set to 1, which means that as I pull the leg, it stretches out. You turn this off. Ooh, that poor foot. Now the leg will never go past its length. This is very good if you have a character doing a flip or something and you want to keep the feet in IK. It avoids that just legs and limbs going all crazy. Pull vector visibility, nice. I like to use pull vectors. You also have the option to use twist, which is just a manual attribute for getting that twist in the knee. I like pull vectors personally. And then you have the space. So what does the foot follow? This is always a good control because, again, going back to that flip example, if you're animating a character doing a flip and you want them to just go, whoop, see how the feet don't move? Well, you could switch them to FK and then they'd move with, but you could also just switch your IK space control or your follow and switch it to, in this case, the cog. And now, whoop, there you go. I can animate a whole flip, the leg goes along, and I just need to animate a little bit of like overlap in the knee. Done. So when I was talking about earlier at the beginning of exploring your rig so that you know how to approach certain animations and to make your life easier, this is one of them. If you don't know about this and you just go, I'm going to animate a flip, and then you just move the IK foot because that's the control that's on, and that's it, you are going to have a hard time. I've done that before. Animating a flip with IK feet, it's horrible. But But if you can adjust that space or switch it to FK, life's so much better. Now, Shiri, what was your question regarding the body mechanics? Because I know it's late for you. I know you have a shot there. If you want me to take a look at the shot, I probably won't have time. But if you have a specific question, definitely let me know. And okay, cool. So let's see. So that's the main controls in there. Oh, do you keep it following the cog for the entire clip, or can you switch it? You can animate it. So if you look at an attribute, as long as it's not grayed out here, you can animate it. So if your character is flipping, you would keep it just following the route, so that way the character doesn't slip and slide. Because if I set this to cog, for example, and move my character forward, that's going to make it very hard to animate a walk. But I can just animate it so that it's in root space first, doing the walk, and then, oh, she's going to do the flip. The moment her foot leaves the ground, I switch it to cog space, finish the flip. As she lands, switch it back to root space. I'm all good. So you can just switch it. It's like switching from FK to IK. It's all of these, or most of these controls we can switch through at any point, and it just makes our life a whole lot easier because we can use the thing that works best for that scenario and that situation versus just having to accept animating this in a painful way. Let's see, you can hover over the follow attribute and press S to set a key. Yeah, so if I just select this, I can hit S to set a key. You can right click, key selected. If I was animating this, I would just be setting keys, so it would be keyed anyway. Now, what other, let's see, do you think that certain animations would be so standard for humanoid characters like the walk cycle that you could just automate it? Well, yes and no. The thing with like a lot of walk cycle, or like things like that, is that it is very generic. It's basically a physics-based system, and you have things like that. So procedural gaming, procedural animation is animation that basically a game engine will adjust your animation to fit multiple rigs, multiple characters, multiple scenarios. So if a character is walking on uneven ground, which is wonderful. But the thing is that, especially a walk cycle, there is so much variation and personality that goes into a walk cycle that while you could technically create a walk cycle generator, you, as animators, we want to be able to build it for this specific character. And there are tools that you can use to build it a little bit, but the final product will have to be touched by a person. And just kind of an example of that, human walk cycles are so varied and so unique that walk cycle recognition is more accurate than facial recognition. So when we are animating a walk, we really want to capture that character and not just use a generic walk. Even though motion, like it is a generic motion, everyone walks. There's so much variation in that an automation would not typically work great for, especially for feature film and things like that. For games, if like it or games or crowds, then it's fine. But for main characters, not so much. And how's the rig so far? Really good. I'm loving this rig. We're still just exploring the controls, but I'm excited to do an animation with this rig. So let's take a look at the next control. So we've got this yellow arrow control, and this one's the one that's a little different from most of the rigs I've used. Usually there's other rotation controls, things like that. Here we have this foot option control. So what I really like is like you just have to translate it here and you can get that nice peeling motion. You twist it to the side, it goes through. Let's see what happens if I move it up or down. Okay, that just moves it up, which is great because it's like acting as an offset control. Nice. I love this. This is one of my favorite features of newer rigs. When I started learning animation, almost no rig had this. And now that most rigs are putting this in, it's just so nice because all you have to do is rotate the heel and look at that. You get that nice ankle motion in there. Oh, I love it. The only thing I would say would be it would be nice if the foot or the shoe moved along with, but that at least you can still get that nice line in the ankle. So that's huge. I love that. Yeah, exactly. That's sort of stamping out a cigarette toe twist. Like that. Now I wonder if you can offset that. So let's see. Let's keep going here. Foot roll angle. This basically determines at what point the toes will come off the ground. So right now it's set to 25, which is usually like a 25-degree angle. If I increase this, that'll keep the toes on the ground longer. This is a very important attribute to use, especially depending on the walk that you want to go for. Now I can really get that pressure of the foot pushing up before it comes off the ground. So very useful there. Otherwise your walks tend to feel a little weird. Yeah, it's the same as the toe brake or foot brake attribute. Different name, same thing. Swivel. Oh, nice. So they actually have independent swivel controls. So you have the heel swivel. Nice. You have ball swivel. Good. And then toe swivel. Nice. It would be cool if you actually had like some rigs I've seen, the actual swivel control can be moved so that you can actually, like, for example, the toe swivel, move it so that the toe swivels from the big toe, or move it over so it swivels from the little toe. The ball swivel left or right or up or down. So you can readjust that a little bit. That's kind of being super nitpicky, but it is a feature I do appreciate in a rig. Let's see. Now we have the toes, toe bend, nice. This is always a nice attribute to have. Toe twist and toe break. Okay. That's definitely great for cartoony animation there. Okay. So that's the main stuff there. Again, the only thing so far on this foot that like I feel I would personally love is to see that shoe rotate a little bit, because that just feels a little flat. But maybe this, let's see, leg options. Okay, so this is our FK-IK switch. Visibility. Okay, so that turns it on so we can see the FK and the IK at the same time. And there's the visibility for those controls. Bendy controls, good. So this rig has bend bows, which is awesome. Bend bows are basically shaping controls that really let you just shape a rig however you want. So if you're going for really cartoony animation, these are great. If you're going for, I don't want to see you. What happened? There you go. If you're going for really cartoony animation, or even just want to shape your poses a little bit more, these are great. So you can just get a little bit more curvature in the leg, a little bit more sculpting in the pose. And for any like final production animation, you will usually have some form of bend bows or bendy controls. Now there's also micro controls, which is interesting because this rig, they tend to use micro, which it seems like it's like bend bows, but just a little bit more refined. So it's like even more kind of smaller sections, which that's nice. It's nice to have the options of just kind of general bending versus really refined motions. So yeah, I think if I was to animate this, I would probably aim for using one or the other, not both. But that's cool. Ah, there's you go. I was talking about foot scale before. There's the option for it. So there we go. Tiny little feet. That's actually kind of creepy. Or you could go Kingdom Hearts and really make those feet huge. Nice. Let's see. When you make small adjustments like this, would you still press set key on all of the controllers? Probably just on those controllers. By the time you get to bend bows, it depends on your workflow. But by the time most people get to bend bows, they've already animated everything else. So now you're just doing a bend bow pass or a micro control pass to clean up the shapes a little bit. So it really just depends on your work style. If I was to start shaping them right from the start, then yeah, I would be setting a key on all of them right from the start. Now we also have the FK foot. Let's see what we have here. FK should be pretty simple. Upper leg. There's the space, so the orientation, which is good. So right now the FK foot is going to move with the hip, or I could set this. Let's set it to root control, and now that foot stays in place there. That's really nice, having that control. Orient or space attributes are huge. They are one of the best things that you can get when you are working on an animation. And then we've got lower leg, and the scale. And then for the foot, main foot control, and then we've got two, it looks like heel. Interesting. I don't know when I'd use that one too much. The toes definitely you'd use, but this heel control feels a little overly stretchy. Maybe like as a squash and stretch control. Yeah, maybe like you can see how that is pinching right there. I wonder if we can use the heel. No. Well, actually, maybe if I tone this down a little bit so that we don't get that pinch there, but then use this to exaggerate, maybe. Yeah, a little bit. We can kind of get a slightly better shape. Yeah, nice. So FK feet, that's pretty much it. Let's see, am I naive to assume leg FK controls are super uncommonly used? Yeah, leg FK is very rarely used. Usually they're used when a character is in the air, they're not touching the ground, or when we want independent control. So for example, let's say you have a character that's sitting down. So they're sitting down, but they're sitting down maybe at the end of a dock, or like they're somewhere where they're high enough that their feet are dangling down. So let's actually lower this foot. Now with IK, that knee is getting in the way, so let's switch the space of the PV to cog, just to simplify this. Okay, so they're sitting at the end of a dock, and we just want them to animate kicking their feet. If I was using IK, that means I'm going to have to rotate this, and you can see how the knee is jiggling. And if I'm not careful, what I'm going to end up doing is like getting these weird arcs, and it's going to be a lot of work to get just that nice arc of the foot kicking and then the overlap in the ankle. Or if I have FK, I can just take that and go whoop, 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 done. Animate a little bit of the thigh reacting to that, just a little bit, and I'm done. So it's very rarely used in comparison to IK. IK is the majority of what we will use for the feet, but it is good to have that switch, because there will be those situations where FK will make the animator's life so much easier. If we don't have FK in that situation, like to do that dock kick, what I would end up doing if I had a rig that didn't have FK, I would have to make a constraint setup where I put a locator or something at the knee, constrain the foot to the locator, and then rotate that to get that same effect. So I'm creating my own FK setup just to get that feeling. Is it bad? No, like honestly, for the amount that I use FK legs, it's like, yeah, it takes me 2 seconds, but it's still nice to have. Yeah, so if she's flying, FK legs could work really well. Basically, anytime that the legs are up, it's kind of up to the animator. Some people prefer FK, others prefer IK. So, yeah, even like, let's say like a Chun-Li kick, if ever you've seen Street Fighter, where she kind of stands and her legs up in the air, that could be something where FK becomes very nice if they're holding their leg up in the air for an extended period of time. Okay, let's get this back in here. Okay, so we did the body, we've done the legs. Let's move on to the arms. So there's one control that I love with the arms is clavicle. And I always test this first because good clavicle controls make an animation so much nicer. So clavicle, that's this little stick control here. And yeah, that works pretty well. The rotation feels like it's rotating from the correct spot, which is on the inner side of the body, not just at the shoulder. So it's rotating from here. Let's see. Normally I see people saying, should I use IK or FK? But can't you use both at the same time? You can, but you almost never should. You should be using one control or the other. If you're mixing them, you're going to be running into a mess of counter animation. Now you can set it so that you can see both of them at the same time. So for example, with the leg here, I could set it so that I could see both sets of controls here. But you'll notice that only one is active at the same time. You could, certain rigs, like if I set the IK/FK to 0.5, I should be able to control them. Yeah, but see how the controls start to disconnect? That's the problem with animating them at the same time. And now you don't know which control to use, and it's a nightmare. So yeah, you want to animate one or the other, but it's okay to see both if that's how you like to animate. For me, it's just more controls, and if I'm not going to touch it, why see it? Let's see. My friend just told me about this. Thank you for checking the rig out. I hope the rig holds up in live video. The rig is awesome. This rig is amazing. I love it. We're just doing an exploration of the rig right now, where we're just kind of diving through all the controls, but it is an amazing rig. I love it. I'm so excited to start animating with it. It's got so many really cool features. For anyone who is curious, like, here's the link once again. If anyone wants to download it, it's free. Although, like, just looking at this here, I highly recommend like paying something for it. It is well worth the developers, like just, they deserve it for making something like this. This is I would say this is a professional level quality rig. So definitely check it out. Oh, and there's a link here. Oh, wait, are you the rigger? Oh, well then, the rigger himself. Oh, welcome. I didn't realize. Thank you so much for dropping by. And even more so, well, actually, Perez, thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate that. But Taka, thank you so much for the rig. This rig is huge. Like for animators, so good, so good. I've worked with a lot of rigs in the past, and this is just amazing. I love it so far. Like I said, I'm super excited to dive in and animate with this thing. It is going to be so much fun. Actually, since you're here, if you have any like social media or anything you want to plug, definitely paste it in the chat, because you deserve all the follows and the attention. This rig, it needs to be seen more. So let's keep going here, because now I'm even more excited to animate with it. So looking at the shrug controls, like I was saying, really good, really solid. I love how they pivot from the center. This is actually something I've noticed in a few free rigs that I've used in the past, is that the clavicle tends to rotate from like slightly further out, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it does mean that you have to watch your shapes and the way the shoulder rotates. So for example, if I rotate here, if you watch that point, see how it comes in towards my face? That's what we want. As they rotate, it should come in, not just up or down. Actually, can I ask you, is there an FK/IK snap? Actually, yeah, I don't think I noticed an FK/IK snap option here. FK/IK snap tend to be kind of tricky. From what I haven't had to create one, but I know that they can be tricky. It is IKFK matching. It will be in the picker. Nice. That's something I still have to get working. I haven't tried to get the picker working yet. Nice. Nice. We've got good translation on the shoulders. That's great. I'm excited to see what the picker is going to look like. Okay, arm. So arm, pretty simple. We've got the FK arm. Now, one thing... Oh, nice. So the elbow is locked to one axis. That's pretty good. That's pretty standard. Got the nice scale attribute. I love how everything can scale on this rig. It feels like doing a cartoony shot with this rig is going to be so much fun. Now, let's see here. One thing I just want to check, and I think we checked this earlier, is by default the arms, you can see how they follow the body exactly. So as you rotate the body, they just kind of stay in that A pose. By default, this is not my favorite way of animating. So just keep this in mind when you're trying out this rig. You might want to switch this. It depends on your preference. For me, I would switch the orient here from chest, and I would probably switch this to root control. So basically what that means is now that as I rotate the body here, see how the arm maintains that angle? This, at least to me, it reduces counter animation. So as I'm animating, I'm not going to be fighting the angle of the arms, and I can just focus on getting better arcs. Let's see. I paid for this just now. I didn't get the symmetrical shoulder move you did. Do you mean like when I move the arms here, they move like mirrored? Or like with the shrug here, if I rotate this, it feels like they're shrugging? Or are you getting like they're moving separate? If that's the case, just switch your rotation mode. So you might be in world mode, which means I'm going to get this, which makes it a little funny dance. If you switch to object mode, now it should be symmetrical on both sides. Or do you mean the arms that we were talking about? So let's see here. So switch that. That's great. Okay, yes, mirrored arms. Okay, yeah, so switch your manipulator. If you've switched your manipulator and it's still not reacting correctly, I would open up your manipulator's options. So click on the hammer icon here, go to your tool options, and hit E to activate your rotate tool, and then just hit reset tool here. That should solve it. See, and you might also want to double check your symmetry options. This might be causing some issues. Make sure that's set to off. You can also find it up here, symmetry. And Woodland Yeti, hey, how's it going? Woodland Yeti and the amazing reference, or not reference, it is good reference though. The amazing video news item, I loved it. Everyone did such a good job, but that ghillie suit animator was genius. I loved it. Such a good job on that. I want to see more of ghillie suit animator. Let's see. So let's take a look here. Oh, nice. And Taka Boo Boo, there's your Twitter. So there we go. So for everyone, I highly recommend checking them out. Oh, nice. Hey, Gunsmith Cats. If ever anyone is interested in analyzing really good vehicle animation and just good animation in general, check out Gunsmith Cats. It's really well animated. But yeah, awesome. Amazing work, Taki. It's you did an amazing job on this rig. And Walk, hey, thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And let's see. Isn't the point of a ghillie suit to not see it? True. Ghillie suits don't really work too well in the middle of the snow, though. Once spring comes in, then you'll be invisible. Let's see. Yeah, Rabid, this rig is very advanced. I feel like just from the rigs I've used, especially free rigs, this is probably up there with some of the most advanced ones I've seen. Like the only thing that would make this kind of like go up to that level of like really, really advanced is when you start getting rigs like with auto deformers where you start getting like the wrinkles or the wrinkles in the brow. But the problem is that would take away from the aesthetic of the rig because anime doesn't have that, and like 2D animation doesn't usually have that. So as much as it would be cool, at least for me, there would be no point in that. Not really. So let's keep exploring this here. So wrist, pretty self-explanatory. Actually, one thing I always check for wrists is this bend here. Okay, we're starting to get a little deformation there. To be fair, I'm over cranking the wrist. It's not bad, but this could definitely, if I was to do something really cartoony, I'd have to be very careful how I push this. Now, let me actually see here. We've got this yellow control, the wrist offset. Can we adjust this? Okay. Doesn't look like. Or maybe the auto bend here. Okay. Okay, so it's getting a little deformation right in there. I'm trying to see if I can push the elbow in a place that kind of solves it. But that's definitely one area that I would have to be very careful of, even this way. It's very rare that you would go further than this because in reality, our anatomy only goes about 90 degrees. Some people are a little bit more flexible. Some are double jointed and they can just bend their hand all the way back. But normally, you don't go further than 90. So it's not a like this is going to break your shots, but it is something to watch out for. Now let's actually go this way. Okay, this is good. Okay, so that's the arm. Not too much there, like it's an arm. But let's go in here. What options do we have? IKFK, good. Bendy controls. Actually, let's try this. The bendy controls might save us here. So as the arm bends back, can I just take my bendy control here and adjust it? Yeah, there we go. So as long as you watch your bendy control, this should solve it. And it kind of looks like the issue that's happening is that as the bend, you can see here, as the arm bends back, the bendy control is twisting on its own, trying to follow that arm. So as long as you keep that in mind and kind of counter that twist, you're going to be good. So yay, we have a solution already. And this is actually one of those things, like when you're animating on a rig, do these quick tests, see how like it bends, and then try to find a solution. Because if you can find a solution now, then you're not having to fight it after you've animated 300 frames and find out, oh, great, now the wrists are broken. What will I do? You know, just take that bend control, rotate it, done. So, let's see. What else do we have here? So we've got the bendy controls, which the bendy controls I really like. Yeah, very solid bendy controls. I like the one thing I was saying earlier on this rig, one thing I really appreciate is the fact that you have so much control over everything. You can rotate, you can scale all the different pieces. That's really nice. Then we have micro, which let me actually test the micro. Does that flip as well? Yeah, so the micro flips. So we could maybe take the micro and do the same thing to solve the issue. I think I would probably use the bendy to solve that. Okay, Now, there's also finger controls here. We're going to save those for just a second. Let's actually switch to IK and see how this feels. Okay. Oh, take care, gaming car. And Animal, hey, thank you so much for the sub. Oh, man. How's the rig? The rig is amazing. It's really good. I highly recommend anyone who wants to start animating with a free rig, check it out. It is so, so good. I don't know if we'll have time today. I was hoping we would, but we kind of ended up answering more questions. But I definitely want to, probably in the next stream on Friday, I want to do an animation with this rig. I'm not sure if we're going to do just a walk cycle, because I think there's a lot of people who are doing walk cycles right now that maybe a demo like that would help. But I definitely also want to do a bigger shot with this rig and kind of just see what we can do with it. Oh, take care, Greg. Have a great night. Let's see. I don't know anything about 3D animation, but do you use pose to pose and stuff, or does that not apply? Yeah, so my typical animation method is usually pose to pose. Even though I'm animating in CG a lot of the time, I tend to approach my animation as if I was a 2D animator. Not that I can draw very well, but it's kind of thinking of each pose as an image, trying to really push the appeal and the just the dynamic elements of it, and then make another pose or drawing and connect them all together. That's my typical approach. It's not always. Sometimes I'll use a layered method, especially for quadrupeds or something like that, or I'll use a straight ahead. Not usually too often, but certain areas I will animate straight ahead, especially with overlap like hair and stuff. Yeah, usually ones and twos. So it really depends on the project. And let's see, Woodenly, you mentioned, I heard you didn't know you and Cameron's photos were in the opening scrapbook portion. Yeah, it took me a while to realize that that first video news item had the like sinister bow and the, well, which photo of Cameron was it? Oh, now I forget. But I had to rewatch it to and see that that image. It was awesome. And then there was like an image of pizza, which I loved. So we switched to IK. Let's check out the IK arm. So IK arm, we've got the shoulder control, which is, again, it's not a necessary control. I would say I would probably almost never use this, but the fact that it's there is nice because it lets us lets me as an animator just shape the arm a little bit more, especially for more exaggerated animations. Let's see, I'd animate on threes. Threes always feel janky. Yeah, threes are tricky. If you can animate on threes, but it really takes a very specific style. If you want to learn how to study or learn how to animate on threes and fours, I would recommend checking a lot of anime. A lot of animes tend to be animated on threes and fours, especially for the kind of still motions. That way they can save their budget to put the actions on ones and twos. And it creates that very specific kind of anime feeling. But I would look at that and see how they hold for so long without it feeling janky. It's a very interesting thing to study. Just actually, for anyone who is interested in studying just any 2D animation, there is a website I highly recommend, which is Sakuga Boru right here. It's basically just a collection of clips from anime and like any 2D cartoon, essentially. It started off only being anime, but they've expanded to basically any 2D shots. And you can just go in here and like find a clip that you like. So here's from what's it called? Conan, Shonen Conan. And you can just go through here and hey, there's an anime clip. And what's really nice is that the player is built for scrubbing. So you can scrub through, analyze the animation. And I believe I think this is just on Chrome, but it might be on Firefox. You can actually download an extension on Chrome that'll give you these extra tools And now I can actually frame through these frame by frame. So you can see here, for example, let's see how long this holds. So 220, it changes. And then 223, it changes again. So this is animated on 3s right here, that push, and yet it feels good. It feels nice and smooth, even though it's on 3s. So you could go through here and see, okay, how are they pushing their arcs? How are they pushing their spacing to make 3s feel so good? So it's, I really love this site. Every few days, I'll just kind of check this and like, okay, let's look at Avatar: The Last Airbender. Let's see what clips there are in here. And just find a clip that, let's see, there we go, from the first episode. I miss this show. So good. And just start analyzing. Okay, look at the spacing. So you can see here that they're skipping the contact frame. This is something I always tell my students. To make a stronger hit, you don't have to do this, but it's a good little rule of thumb. If you want a contact to feel stronger, just skip the contact. So there's a gap. The next frame, he's reacting, but you can see how much his body is dragging behind down there. It's his head, and specifically the back of his head, not the top, but the like right at the middle back of the head that's pushing forward. And then it just slams forward, and then he starts to react. And look at that spacing. And you can see this actually holding, so he hits this pose on frame 75. So 75, 6, 7, 8. It's holding for 4 frames for a very intense motion. And when we play it, it feels smooth. So study that. How do they do this? And what's the extension called? Let's see. What is the extension called? I think if you just do it, like do a search for Sakuga Boru and then extension. Let me see here. Where is it? It's Sakuga Extended. Let's see. Here it is. I'll give you the link there. Let's see. Oh, it's definitely not laziness. It is, what would be the right word? Using your budget to its maximum. So this is the big thing with animation, especially like film or TV animation, is you don't have a budget to animate everything on ones or to get Pixar level animation. If you tried, the entire quality of the show would just go and drop down because you're trying to put your money into everything evenly. That's just a waste of money, and honestly, it's just going to make the whole show not as good. So what you do is you save money in certain areas. In this case, you animate this on 4s. Does it change the dynamic feel of this? No. The posing is amazing, it's still dynamic, it's powerful, but it doesn't need to be on 1s. It doesn't need to even be on 2s. It's on 4s and it looks great. And then once you do that, you can save your money to really push the animation in other areas. So let's find, I'm trying to think of a really good clip here. And this, like, this is Nickelodeon, not Cartoon Network, but Cartoon Network is the same thing. The animators on Cartoon Network are amazing. Especially like there's some clips from Adventure Time that's great. The clips from Steven Universe, the last episode, if you've seen that, that's just really well done. Let's see. This is still from the first episode. Let's see how they're animating this. So this looks like it's still on 4s for certain parts. This section right here is on 2s. I miss this show. Yeah, that overlap there is on 1s. So his hair and his clothing is animated on 1s right there. Nice. Yeah, so wherever they need the budget, that's where they put it. That show is amazing. If anyone hasn't seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, do yourself a favor and watch it. It is so good. Let's see. I'm talking about how in some episodes, Steven Universe, they just didn't use storyboards, our character models sometimes. Well, actually, that's a whole other. This is going off topic of what this is here, but this is actually a good topic to talk about. Is like there's this kind of debate between people about like shows like Steven Universe. The style of the characters from episode to episode, they will change. One episode, for example, Pearl will just have a perfectly round head. Other episodes, she's going to have a taller head. The characters' heights change all the time. And personally, to me, I don't care. Mostly because there's two reasons for it. One is Steven Universe is a storyboard-driven show, which means that instead of having artists do the storyboards and then just redoing all the storyboards to make them fit a specific style, they let the storyboard artists' art shine through. So you can kind of tell who storyboarded which episodes just by the way the characters are designed. To me, I love that because you see the little touches that certain people do. It's kind of like when you see Milt Kahl, like in classic Disney films, you just see a Milt Kahl hand, the way it moves, the way it's shaped with the square fingers, and you know that's Milt Kahl. Disney could have gone, nope, you got to shape your fingers exactly the same. Everyone's got to have the exact same hands. But no, they let the animators' individual styles shine through. The genie is very recognizable as Eric Goldberg's animation. Even though he tends to fit more of the rest of the style in certain ways, the way he's drawn is very much Eric Goldberg. I like being able to see that. It's getting to see it's almost like seeing the signature of the artist in there. So with Steven Universe, I really like that. But the second thing is that Steven Universe, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Steven Universe, every single season, their budget kept getting cut and cut and cut so that they would have less money to produce everything. So in order to save money and make it so that they could produce really quality animation and a quality show, is that they skipped out on that fixing process and just went, yeah, we're going to let the storyboard artists do their thing, and there we go. And that's cool because that lets the whole show rise up in quality versus dumbing everything down just to keep a drawing consistent. Yeah, and that's really it. It comes down to preference. Like for me, I don't mind that it changes all the time. Some people, it breaks the immersion of them. It's the same with, for example, anime. Let's say, since we've got an anime rig here. I like anime. I like any animated film, really. And there are moments in anime where you will have a character that get really weird expressions. So, for example, I just have this open here. So this is My Ordinary Life. And this is a random clip I opened up for this. And you'll see that as the characters move through the scene, they change style consistently. So here you've got these big, cute eyes, very kind of typical anime, I guess you could say. Then at the end, suddenly you go into like very narrow eyes. This character here, when she gets up, where is it? There was one frame, like right there, the eyes are squarer. They change styles so much through this shot. Even this section here, the eyes are drawn differently than the other scene. I like that because it makes variety. Like even on these frames here, the face is gone. There's no face. I like that. I know people who cannot stand watching this show because every time it changes style, it breaks their immersion completely, and it takes them out of the show. They're watching just a random series of shots instead of a collected story because they are constantly being pulled out of the film or the TV series. So like with any show, this applies. When you have that change of style, for some people, it doesn't affect them. Other people pulls them out. So kind of to put an end to that point, it's really down to personal preference. Uh, yeah, so body proportions, expressions. I know some people who don't mind the body proportions, but it's the expressions. Whenever they change the expression and they change the style that the face is drawn, can't stand it. Watching Steven Universe, not a problem. I actually know some people who, like, watching Steven Universe, they didn't realize that the style was changing. Like, they just it didn't even dawn on them that, yeah, one episode was drawn differently than the other, because they don't look at that when they're watching the film. But the moment that a facial expression was changed too much, out. So it is a very weird thing. And it's the tricky part with any, like, just the film industry in general, is we have all of these rules, all of these kind of things that we can use to try and improve our films. But at the end of the day, humans are different. We see things differently. We look at things differently. So there's no answer that's going to be universal. And we kind of just have to go with how to put this, at least for me, like when I'm trying to create something, I go with what would I like to see? What would I feel inspired by? What do I hope will inspire someone else? And at the end of the day, when you post something, people are going to hate it. Some people are going to like it. Some people might even love it, hopefully. That's the goal. But as long as you had fun doing it, that's the important thing. See, how often do you have to send a character back to a rigger? It depends on the studio, and depends on what stage of the animation it's in. If you're really early on, oftentimes you're going to be sending that quite often back and forth. There's going to be at least a few updates, especially early on. By the end of production, it's almost non-existent because the rig has been tested and it's all good. But there's really no set number. It also depends on if the rig is something new. So for example, let's say this is kind of just using it as an example. This is not what actually happened in any way. But let's say you're animating on a Disney film. So Frozen. Frozen, you have human characters that are like human proportions. Now, when Moana comes out, they can use the same style of rig and the same controls from the Frozen show onto Moana, because the characters are, again, human, same-ish proportions for the most part. There might be a few tweaks, but there's not too much to change in there. So all the improvements you made on the first rig can kind of be used and like reverse engineered back onto the new one. But what if you're animating on Zootopia? Suddenly, these rigs are very different. They're animalistic. They have totally different facial structures, different body structures. You can't just transfer that rig. So when you deal with a new rig like that, you're going to oftentimes get more kind of revisions that go through. So it really just depends. And sometimes it just depends on like luck of the draw. Sometimes a rig will be made and it's like no issues. It just works and it's great. Other times a rig just keeps like, there's things that keep going wrong with it. So yeah. Let's see. What's the difference between root and world controls? So world controls are typically set to the world, so the axis down here in the center. Root control, the root layout, root layout and what's the other? Root layout and mover controls are usually the global control that lets us move a character like around here. So for example, if I take this hand and we'll take the IK control, I can switch this to either the root, so this will match the hand to follow this control here, or I could set it to follow the world, which is the actual universe the character lives in, like this. And now you can see that the hand is locked off to that world space. So when we're talking about world controls is the world that the character lives in. It's not a specific control, it's just kind of the global axis, you could say. So let's go back into the IK arm here, since we were talking about that just for a little bit. And if anyone else has other questions, definitely feel free to ask. So IK arm, we had looked at the shoulder. We've got the PV control here, which is pretty self-explanatory. You can switch the space to cog, which is good that it's set to that by default. Usually you don't want the elbow control to follow the hand. That gets really weird quickly by default. Then we have the wrist control and then the offset control here. Now, one thing that I would love to see on this rig, like this is just a personal preference of mine, is you have this offset control, which is great because it allows you to adjust the rotation of the hand and then use the main wrist control to adjust from there. So it gets you a secondary movement that you can use. But the big thing that I like is when you have an offset control that you can move. So just like we were talking about with the cog here, how if I wanted this character to swing from a swing, I can just do this. And now with this one control, I can just rotate them as if they're swinging. You can do, when those offset controls in the wrist give you that same option, that's really nice because you can move the offsets to be in the middle of the hand. And then when you rotate the hand, it could be like a character on a motorcycle and revving the motorcycle, or if a character is grabbing onto something, you can rotate from that point. Does it need to be there? No, because I can just set a constraint and animate that manually. But it is nice when it's built into the rig. At least for me, it's just like, it saves me some time creating a constraint. So I enjoy that. Let's see, what other controls do we have? We've got length. So same thing as before, the length of the arm. Lock elbow, which is great if ever you have to set your character's elbow down on the table. Okay, softness, which I believe is for like fixing knee pops. Full Vester twist. Okay, perfect. That's pretty simple. Right there. Okay, so from here, let's actually go to the finger controls. Now, actually, wait, there's a secondary control. Okay, that's the palm control. Interesting. I would have thought that would have been turned on with the finger controls, but I guess it does make sense that it's separate. So finger controls. Finger controls are where I start getting picky. Mostly because I really like getting good hand animation. So anytime I just like to have the control given. And from what I can see here, they already have a ton of control. So first control I always look for on a rig, specifically on the fingers, is if you have some sort of metacarpal control. So for anyone who doesn't know, the anatomy of the hand, the metacarpals are the bones in your hand, your palm, right there. The phalanges are the bones in your fingers. So when we're talking about hand controls, you either have finger or palm controls, or you have metacarpal and phalange controls. The metacarpal controls are very important. Our hands twist and bend in the palm area. It doesn't stay flat. And you'll notice that right now, by default, this hand is very flat the way it's rigged, which is good. That's fine. Totally fine. But a lot of rigs that I've used in the past do not allow you to adjust that. It just stays flat, which is bad. I don't like that because it kills any hand pose. Here we have this master or this palm control, which makes me, or just allows me to take this and rotate that palm. So now we can get that nice separation in there and that curl. That is really, really nice. Not only that, but we have the metacarpal controls individually here. So I can bring up that middle metacarpal, get that knuckle to really show through there, and just really push that curve in that hand. And even just doing this, suddenly the hand looks more alive, just by adjusting those metacarpals super quickly and roughly. Versus this kind of flat, just meh look. This rig, this is the Reimu rig. It is free, and let me actually get you the link here. And you can find it on that link right there. It is an amazing rig. It's totally free, which is also great. But I recommend like just $1, like whatever you can give to the rigger, it is worth the price. From the experimenting I've done today, just exploring the rig, it's really powerful. So highly recommend supporting that rigger. So let's keep looking at the fingers here. So metacarpal's good. A+ there. Now let's actually look at the thumb before we get to the fingers. One thing with the thumb that I always look for is the pivot point of the thumb. I've seen a lot of rigs where that pivot point doesn't really work too well. So I always like to double check how this works. And for the most part, that looks pretty good. I feel like it's a little stiff down here personally, but it is also a very stylized character. So it's not like we need to get that much motion. And worst case scenario, I can always just translate that thumb a little bit to really help push that silhouette. So normally if this was, or if the control didn't allow me to translate this, I would feel a little limited as an animator with this rotation. But because I can translate it, it's fine. It just allows me to get that better range of motion, because if you look at the silhouette of the thumb here, you can really push that a lot. It really can change right down here. So I like to have that extra range in there. But this is good. Now, the other joints should be pretty simple. Does feel like it's a little stretchy right there, but not bad. Once again, it's very stylized, so it lets you get those like soft hands, but at the same time, I can always, again, translate this to get that sharper angle if I wanted that knuckle to be like really sharp there, that 90-degree bend. Okay. So, what else do we have? Fingers. Let's just quickly look at the rotations. Yeah, pretty good. I'm just rotating them globally just to see how it feels. I wouldn't normally do that, but just kind of get that feel in there. And then let's see. Another thing I always double check is how much I can push the metacarpals inwards here. Because as we close our fingers, the last thing you want to do is have gaps in the fingers. So you close your hand, there's no gaps between your fingers there. So if I take this, for example, let's just do a quick fist. Oop, and make sure I select all the controls. What did I select here? Oh wait, oh cool. So this control here acts as like a global finger control as well. That's nice. I personally probably wouldn't use this. I'm just not a fan of global finger controls, but it is cool that they include that. I like that. At least it's there for an option. Nice. That's really cool. Okay, so let's curl this in. And yeah, so see how there's a gap between that finger there and everything feels a little flat? This is where you would use the metacarpals and the finger rotations and really push that in. Get that nice shape in there. Let's take that palm and rotate that down to round out the metacarpal. Something like that, kind of push them in a little bit, get that compression. And then just for the sake of stylization, I'm going to take the middle metacarpal, push that up a little bit. So now we start getting that round shape right through there. When you're doing a fist pose, try not to let all the fingers curl in evenly. Usually the index finger tends to poke up a little bit higher. So doing something like that, you can see how that makes the pose a little bit more dynamic than if it's just everything flat and even. So, good. Very pleased with those hand controls. I think it gives me everything that I would need to get really good in the peeling hand poses. The big one is the metacarpals. I've seen a lot of rigs that they skip out on the metacarpals because, hey, it's the palm, it doesn't move. It does. And if it doesn't move, you notice it. It feels really weird. Okay. Now let's see. We did miss out on the neck controls. So the neck, usually it's not too much in here. Now there's actually one control here that I'm actually slightly worried about. I should say worried. Let's see. Let's make sure this follows the route. So once again, when I animate the character, I don't like the head to follow the body typically. I like the head to stay straight. I feel like it just gives me less counter animation to deal with. But the neck typically should follow the body. That just creates a better connection between the neck and the body, makes it more anatomically correct. The thing though is it doesn't look like there's a way to switch the space of the neck. Not that you have to do that too often, but it is a feature that I do like once in a while, so that as you move the body, the neck and head stay in line. Not a huge like, oh, this is terrible, I can't animate with this. Not at all. It's super minor, but it is definitely something I do use. I do find I use once in a while. So having that feature would be a cool little addition there. Unless it's somewhere and I'm not finding it. Let's see. Let's look at the head. So orient, head scale. There we go. Perfect. Haha. I like how you can scale the head, because you can definitely go like very, what's the term, chibi style, or like more Sailor Moon-esque, where their proportions are a little like more human. Not exactly human, but their heads are definitely not as big as other shows. That's really cool. And it scales well too, which I like. Like it doesn't feel like it's scaling and it just feels misproportioned. Yeah, really solid. I think that's all the controls. I think we went through everything. Yeah, this is a fantastic rig. So kind of just to summarize, like for anyone using this rig, just a few things to keep in mind is by default when you open the rig, the head and the arms are going to follow the body. This is personal preference. I personally recommend, or I personally like to have them so that they don't follow the body. So as you move there, you can see how that left arm, because it's an FK, keeps its angle. This avoids counter animation. Same with the head. Animating this way is going to cause the head to have to be counter animated a lot. So I would just switch this. The other thing to keep in mind is that you don't have one on the neck. So just be careful of that. The neck will always move with the body. And the only other feature, like playing around with this rig, the only other feature that I feel like, oh man, wouldn't it be nice to have, is to be able to rotate the bottom of the foot there. The bottom of the shoe, I should say. I don't mind that it's separated from the foot, but it would be cool to have that ability to adjust the heel. And this is just kind of me imagining certain shots where technically the sole of a shoe is pretty stiff, so it's not going to be twisting and bending. But there are times when you want to exaggerate a pose and put a little bit more energy into it. And I feel like not having that ability to rotate that kind of limits that posing potential. Now, to be fair, does it have to? No, because all I have to do is tilt the foot on its side like this. Now the heel's at an angle, and then take the, where was it? The toe control, which was it here. And let's just do a toe twist there. Done. I'll have to reposition the foot a little bit, make it go down a little bit there. But now we get that nice push. So that's basically what I was talking about, how suddenly you get that angle right through the leg all the way into the heel. That's basically it. So you can still do it. It's not like you're stuck without it, but to have that built into a manipulator versus having to kind of play around with multiple controls, it's something I like. It just makes it feel more intuitive, if that makes sense. Yeah. I think that's about it. Let me just undo here. Just setting the character back to their default. Oh yeah, and then the wrist. That wrist twist, you just have to watch the bend bows, and I wonder if actually that's what's happening with the leg. Let me actually test this here. So like as I rotate the foot, no wait, what was it? When you turn off auto stretch and stretch the foot, see how it starts to bend here? I wonder what's causing that. Let's turn on the bend bows and watch them. No, not the bend bows. It could just be some skin weighting. Very rarely would this ever happen anyway, but it is one of those things where there is occasionally, very rarely, times when I will use the IK control and stretch it past the leg in order to just keep that leg straight the whole time. And with this, I would have to be very careful to avoid that because it's going to start distorting that foot. Is that a bad thing? No, because I can just switch it to FK or... Oh, it's not intentional? Okay, cool. Hey, there you go. See, everything's going to be fixed, and then it's going to be like the best rig ever. It's going to be just the perfect rig. That's cool. So that's awesome that you're already thinking of fixing that. Let's see. And then I think someone mentioned IK fingers. IK fingers, honestly, I've never really used a rig with IK fingers. It's just one of those things that is not standard in the industry. You'd think it would be, because it would be nice to be able to just do this and then have the fingers stay. But for the most part, it's not too hard to animate that with just doing it manually. The other thing is that fingers tend to slip around on surfaces a lot. So even if they're in IK, you're going to have to do a lot of like subtle animation anyway. So this doesn't have IK fingers. Doesn't bother me at all. But I do love this control. You can kind of use this a little bit like IK fingers, just to kind of keep them pressed down on something. I probably would just animate it manually because that's what I'm used to, but that control can be really cool. Yeah, so the wrist, that foot. What else did we see here? Oh yeah, the neck follow. So the root global world or thing. The shoe moving with the ankle, yeah. Which, again, I don't mind the fact that it stays put like this because it gives me the options, because sometimes you do want to keep the heel flat to make the shoe look more solid. It would be cool to have both. Like, that's just me being like greedy as an animator. And then, oh yeah, like just in terms of features I would love is the ability to turn off the ponytail while keeping the rest of the hair in place. Simply because, like, if a student approaches this, they're not used to body mechanics. Maybe this is their first rig that they're using body mechanics on. Being able to just turn off the hair and just stick with a very simple hairstyle, it lets them focus more on the body mechanics and not the overlap. kind of in that same vein, and totally like this is not necessary at all, but it would be cool to have a alternate hairstyle that is just a simple hairstyle. Now, because this is based on anime, like usually the anime hairstyle is poofier, but something that just doesn't have huge bangs or like a ponytail or long hair, a short hair version essentially. Once again, is just, it's nice to have for new animators or people who just want to do a quick body mechanics test. Yeah, exactly. Anime hair and simple don't often go together. Exactly. That's the big thing. If I feel like if the hairstyle was made simple, you would lose the aesthetic. So it's a weird like balance there. And honestly, like for most people, like, or not most, like for animators who are like wanting to animate this on a full shot, the hair it has is perfect. It's really kind of thinking of this more from the body mechanics perspective. This is a lot of hair to animate in when you're trying to focus on your body mechanics as an animator or as a learning animator, student animator. Yeah. What else? Was there something else? The outfits I love. I did want to say huge shout out, like huge props and kudos for the clothing rig. It is one of the best clothing rigs I've seen ever, especially for a free rig. So that is awesome. So let's turn on the regular clothing here. Like that solid clothing rig is just so good. I'm super excited to just play around with that and animate the clothes on this. Cool collide hair so the hair doesn't go through the back. Yeah, so similar to the collide on the dress where if you raise the foot, you get that. That would be kind of cool on the hair so that at least when you're doing your first pass of animation, you're not getting things like this. I wonder if like even if you were to have a hairstyle similar to this, but just like tie up the back of the hair, so instead of having it hang down, this whole bottom section would just come up, so that way it at least gets rid of one extra thing that students would have to deal with. Let's see. Yeah, this is a solid rig. Absolutely fantastic. And especially considering it's free, like that's just the quality that you're getting on this rig for a free rig is just like mind-blowing. Like, yeah, like the cross hatching, like there's, look at the detail in the hair, how it's got that 2D still texture. I don't think I've ever seen a free rig that did that. Like usually it's just a flat color, kind of like the skin here where it's just flat. But to have this cross hatch, that's just really cool. There's the link to the rig. It's totally free, although I highly recommend just throwing in $1 or $2 if you can. It's well worth it. So yeah. Oh yeah, and then the only other thing I think we were talking about before, ear controls. I don't think I saw any ear controls. So let's turn off the hair controls. Let's actually just turn off the hair. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any ear controls. Unless I'm missing them in here. Facial. No. Yeah. It would be cool to have some ear controls, personally. Facial miss. Oh, there we go. Haha. There you go. That's everything I ever needed. Perfect and nice. The pivot point works great. Yeah, that's perfect. Exactly what I needed. Let's see. Trying to think if there's any other controls. Now, a lot of the things that I'm talking about, I haven't tried the GUI picker, so I'm not sure if the GUI picker is going to increase the options that we have. Oh, actually, yeah, that's a good, that would be a good control to have, actually, so that the head squash and stretch. That would be really cool. And that's, if you're already thinking of adding one, that's going to be awesome. Just to be able to push that line of action of the face and the head, try to get that really nice squash and stretch, especially in the jaw. That's going to be cool. What other controls do I tend to use a lot on a rig? You've got great bend bows. Oh yeah, actually there is one other thing, and I might have been missing this somewhere. So let me actually double check. Is the resolution of the rig. It would be cool to have a toggle that can easily switch the resolution. So for example, right now if I zoom in, we can see that nickeling on the, oh, she does have a nose control. It's in the miscellaneous facial controls. You can see a little bit of the nickeling on the face right here. I can easily solve this just by selecting all the geometry here and hitting 3 on the keyboard. And then, whoop, it's nice and smooth. And look at that. Ah, so nice. I can even, let's just hit page up to increase that density a little bit more. So it smooths it out a little bit. It would be cool to have that kind of just as a toggle somewhere where you can just like go low res, high res, and it just turns on that tessellation in there. And am I going to do any animation with this rig? Probably on Friday. I'm going to try to do a little bit of animation with this. And actually, what's going on here? Interesting. I think it might be my camera. So see how the mouth is starting to kind of get a little weird there? I think that's just my near clip plane in Maya. So I'll select the camera, go to my attribute editor, and turn on or increase my near clip plane. Yeah, I think that did it. So let's double check. Yeah, I had 2D pan and zoom and then near clip plane. Okay, good. I'm just looking at the high res, low res version just to see what differences there are, if there is anything super noticeable. Not really. It's really just the face. Like if I was to do a nice close-up of the face, it feels like in the low res, it's just a little, like, especially that line over the eye. That's where I'm seeing it the most. The rest feels pretty good, like negligible difference. And Getoa, hello, how's it going? The clip plane, no. Yeah, the clip plane is always a pain. Especially the fact that Maya's default clip plane is always set to 0.01. It just doesn't work with lots of rigs. So for anyone who's curious, the clip plane, just show this. By default, it's set to 0.01. Or sorry, 0.1, not 0.01. And basically what that means is the clip plane determines what's going to render in your shot, and basically what Maya considers, or how it considers geometry to intersect or not. Like at what point does it go, yeah, they're close enough, we'll just consider that actually on top of each other. That's a super simple explanation. And the problem with the clip plane is when you have that default value, when you move your camera too far away, you're going to start getting like these artifacts in here. Let's zoom in like that. Basically, Maya is having trouble rendering things correctly, or at least it's trying its best. So by default, it's usually good to raise that a little bit, especially with most rigs. Usually a value of 1 is going to solve it for most cases unless you go really far, in which case you could just up it to 10. Now, by default, that By default, the value is 0.1, which is kind of a pain when almost every rig, it looks better when you have to set it to 1. So as an animator, if you are using Maya predominantly for animation, what I actually recommend is just switching that as to a 1 value as your default. And you can do this in 2 places. So the first place is go under Create, Cameras, Camera, and open up your options. So this is going to be the options for any new camera that you create in Maya. And just go down here, switch your near clip plane to 1, go to Edit, Save Settings. Now, whenever you create a new camera, it'll always have that proper clip plane in there. Next, open up your settings preferences. You can do that under Windows, Settings Preferences, Preferences. Go under, now I'm gonna have to, Cameras right here, and set your near clip plane to 1 right there, and then hit Save. Now, whenever you open Maya, the default cameras, so the perspective, side, front, top, will always have a near clip plane of 1. You never have to worry about changing them again, other than for shots that you're going to have the camera very, very far away. So I like to do that. It just saves time, because every time I open up a scene, I'm always changing it anyway. So might as well make that my default. Yeah. I think that's everything on this rig that I wanted to explore today. I didn't expect us to explore this rig for 3 hours straight. Oh, is there a tongue curl or a tongue control? I believe so. I think that's under the mouth control here. So let's go in there. I feel like I was animating or I had seen a tongue control somewhere. Oh wait, gotta turn on the facial controls. So facial controls on. Yeah, right here. So let's actually open up her jaw. You can see the tongue controls right there. And animate that. And then, let's see. There was one thing I wanted to check with the teeth. Yeah, that's good. There you go. And nice, you have a easy tooth visibility toggle. This is something I always love on a rig. When you've got the bottom teeth here and you might want to just make a simple mouth shape, you can just select that, boop, teeth gone. Very nice. You don't have to actually hide the geometry. That's really nice. And zip mouth, yeah, the mouth controls on this are wonderful. You've got so many options. So let's turn on the primary lip controls. So you have on this, you can adjust the corners right there. To adjust the pinch, you can spread it out a little bit more. Whoa, it's a little sensitive there. But you can spread that out. But you can also just take these individual controls and rotate those to get exactly the shape you want. This is awesome. It is so good. I think this is the first time I've ever seen a rig with these controls here, this rotation control, and I love it. It's so cool. Normally when I'm animating mouths, I tend to use the shaper controls. So mouth, no, which one? Lip secondary. So I would tend to use these controls and do the same thing. So you can just shape that this way as well. But I do like that option where you have one or the other. So you can either go like really refined and go into these individual lip controls, or you keep it a little simpler. I like that. Let's see. Maybe some way to make the wider pose the default would be nicer. Wider pose. Oh, for the mouth. Yeah. Mouth shapes. The thing with mouth shapes is oftentimes like you're going to be changing them quite a bit. So there's no default pose that's going to really fit a lot of like it's going to have to be changed basically. Let's see the primary. I do love the ability to just kind of rotate the mouth over, and I love how it's set. So this is a really cool feature. Usually mouth controls are set to move. The pivot point is set to the mouth. This is set to the center of the head, which means that if I want the mouth to be to the side of the face, instead of translating it, all I need to do is rotate it, and it rotates around the face, which is really cool. It's a little thing, but it makes such a difference to just easily push that mouth all the way over, and then I can just kind of shape it from there. So really, really intuitive controls, which I really appreciate. Anytime when you're using a rig and it just like it feels good to work on the rig is nice. We're starting to get a little deformation there, but I just have to pull that back a little bit. This could also be because I have the geometry, I believe, set to high res, which could be causing some issues. Yeah. So I keep the rig on low res. It kind of doesn't get that as bad. So I think with that, we can probably call it for this stream. I'm technically a little over here what I normally do. I've got a whole bunch of work that I have to get to. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful. Not just for seeing the rig, but hopefully understanding like how to approach analyzing a rig. It's just exploring, looking at the controls, trying to figure out each one, and just kind of diving into how you can push things, just playing around with the controls and try to find solutions now. That's the big thing. And this is going to be the trickiest part when you're first starting out animating, because you don't know what issues you're going to run into yet. You're just starting out. But taking that a little bit of time and just kind of trying to think your way through it is going to make your life a whole lot easier. The last thing you want is to be halfway through your shot and then find out that, oh, if only I had known about this follow a line or this world mode, suddenly all your animation is going to be so much easier, and that you've been fighting the program for all of this time. We don't want that. It's terrible when that happens. So just taking that little bit of time, like we took 3 hours on this, but to be fair, we were answering a lot of questions and just kind of chatting about it. Something like this, it takes about half an hour. Just explore the rig, see, like do it quickly, and it's going to save you time in the long run.